Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business. Look forward to talking with Justin Skinner. Justin, it's great to see you. I appreciate you having me on your podcast a couple weeks ago. Today, we're going to talk about your book, Professional Failure, using the gifts of failure to better yourself and those around you. You know, I love talking about failure. I think it is, it's how we grow. I was listening to a talk. I can't remember who it was, but it was talking about how CEOs of corporate companies talk about failure differently than entrepreneurs of people, right? So you get into a room of, CEOs who have worked up the ranks in corporate America, and they're talking mostly about their accomplishments. You get into a room with entrepreneurs who started from scratch, and they're talking about how they turn their failures into lessons into their business. And so I love talking about failure because I think so many lessons can be learned, and it can provide intellectual shortcuts for those who listen to those who have kind of, walked the path before them. And so let's dive into your book, Professional Failure. You talk about a lot of things in the book, but one thing is that failure is a gift. So let's start there.
Yeah. Well, John, thanks for having me. First of all, really enjoyed having you on my podcast. Love the
Thanks, man.
conversation. But yeah, as far as failures as a gift, I think it's kind of a mindset shift. And I had seen it in maybe some people early on where they were almost fearful to make a mistake. So they didn't try anything. So I just kind of wanted to flip the script on it. And if you could view failures as something, as a positive going forward, then you're more likely to go into it and not be as scared as of that failure.
Yep.
So with that, just kind of tried to break it down in the book, and, here's some steps, here's maybe a perspective that I have, and maybe this can spark something in your own mind and take away that fear of failure.
Yeah. Let's talk about the book for a minute. It's broken up into about 13 chapters. I always have books that kind of have very succinct titles, and that you can read or you can actually open up. But you talk about everything from humility, curiosity, raising your levels. Basically the mindset to have. But one of the things I love about the book is that you really start off with talking about humility. And I think, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Brene Brown, where she talks about in Daring Greatly, when you're in the arena, it's a pretty vulnerable place to be. And to fail, I think you need to be in the arena. You need to be vulnerable. You have humility. So just kind of like mix that. What does that mean to you, your book, your perspective?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I think the humility part of it, it was actually really emotional for me to write because as I was thinking back, I think what humility does is it gets you in a mindset to learn, and more importantly, to learn from older, wiser, sometimes younger, but just learn from people around you. And as I was writing through that humility chapter and thinking of the mentors that I had, I think humility again allows you to open your mind and say, I don't know everything, and that's okay, and I'm okay to listen to the advice of either parents or mentors or whoever you have in your life. And without humility, I think it's really easy, and I've seen it. And obviously, you don't need to name names, but I'm sure you've seen it as well.
Yeah.
Without humility, people just start saying, "Well, I don't do anything wrong. I've made all the best decisions. I don't need to learn anything else."
Yeah.
And I think that's just a very destructive way to be. So I think humility is one of the biggest keys to kind of navigating failures, because it puts you in a frame of mind saying, you know what, it's okay. I don't know everything. I'm going to go into this. I'm going to try and do well. And if I don't, that's okay, because I'm going to learn something.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. I love the way you described that. You talked about how it was emotional to write your book. I found I'm in the process of writing my second book, but the first book that I wrote a few years ago, it kind of is an emotional journey, because when you really sit down to write, you think you're going to write about one thing, but then it kind of starts to take a world of its own. I get asked a lot about, hey, tell me about writing a book, because there's a book I want to write, but ... or I don't know how to get started, ... Talk about a little bit about just your journey of how the process of how you wrote the book.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually didn't write a lot in high school or college, and, papers were something where we were required to write something. I would write it as fast as possible just to get it over with. And then I started writing almost as a form of therapy, and my wife and I actually we're still going through, a bout of infertility. It's just like phantom infertility, don't know what's going on. But I wrote about it, had a friend that, hey, would you write about this for my magazine? So we did, and I realized how therapeutic writing was, and how it really clarified my thoughts. It almost like centered me around gratefulness. So I kept writing, and I was lucky enough to get in a group with three or four really good published authors, and they gave me a lot of tips and said, do this, don't do this. And I just got in a rhythm. And one of my favorite artists is actually Norman Rockwell. And
Mm,
that's something I took from him when we visited his place up in the Northeast. He One of the things we learned was like he was so consistent, and obviously he was a great artist. But what he did, he every single morning at 9 a.m. he woke up and he just went to work.
yeah,
Didn't make excuses. He did. So I kind of took that same thing and I approached writing with that. So every morning there was a set time that I was going to sit down and I was going to write, whether it was good or it was bad. I was just going to write.
yeah,
And that was the process that really worked for me. I didn't really worry about what the end product was going to look like. I just had an outline of 13, 14 ideas or chapters, and then broke those down into sub chapters, and then wrote as much as I could on each one
yeah,
on a daily basis.
yeah, yeah. I love that. You talk about the end product. I love to write. I'm not a writer, but I love to write. My daughter is a beautiful writer, but my writing is, the writing, the grammar is horrible. This, everything is off. But what I always tell people also is, you don't have to be a good writer to write a book. You just, behind every writer is a better editor, and that's all
Yes.
you need. That's all you need.
Exactly.
Um,
I totally agree with that. And if I can
yeah,
speak to that real quick, that's one thing too that I think some people get caught up on is, man, I have to write well. I can't make mistakes. And I can guarantee you, I went through like three different edits, and even seeing it with your own eyes, sometimes you gloss over it. But I think the most important thing is going into it, just knowing I'm not going to write perfect. I'm going to write sentences that are misspelled. I'm going to have
yeah,
a lot of things wrong, and it's okay because there's people around you that can help, narrow those failures within the book. But even after having three or four people edit the book and go through it, I can say that there's still a couple mistakes in the book, but
yeah,
it's kind of part of the fun of it. It's like, you know what? It's okay. It's out there. I wrote it, and even though it's not just perfect, it's okay.
yeah. Let's talk about that. Chapter 8 in your book, you talk about perfection is poison.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer as a business coach. I'm working with people. It's all about progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
And to me, it's everything is a living document and in real time. So, what's your perspective? Think community. I'm just kind of highlighting a couple chapters, but you can obviously buy this book anywhere books are sold. But talk a little bit about perfection is poison.
Yeah. I think perfection is another thing that I mean, something that I've had to work through, and it's something that I've seen other people struggle with. It's that you don't want to start until the conditions are perfect. You're going to carry out in a perfect way. So I think if you really focus on things having to be perfect, whether it's writing a book, whether it's marriage, whether it's whatever it is, we're all imperfect, and rarely, if ever, are you ever going to have a perfect execution of anything.
Yeah,
So I think if you have that mindset, everything's got to be perfect, everything's got to line up, it's just going to handicap you, and it's going to cause you to sit in inaction. And I think it's pretty destructive in the long run. So if you can go into things thinking, you know what, I'm going to try my best, I'm going to try and get better, the next time I do this, then I think that's a lot better than going into this saying, this has to be perfect, because it puts so much pressure on you. It just doesn't allow you to relax and perform to the best of your ability.
yeah. Let's talk about. I could agree with you more. Let's talk about as you're building this book, as you're writing this book, you launch the book. The work that you do on a consistent basis. What are some of the biggest lessons that have been pulled out from some of the biggest failures of people that have come to you and had these epiphanies after whether reading the book or just you talking around the book?
Yeah, one of my favorite ones. So there's two examples. I'll give one. So probably an 80-year-old guy that I've known for a while. He's a great guy. His name's Bill. He came up to me afterwards. He was like the first in line for a book signing, just an amazing guy. And he came up and he just said, you know what, Justin, I've really thought a long time about writing and, doing a podcast, but I was always scared to start. And here's why. And so we talked through it. And he said, after reading your book, I think I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna try it. So little things like that, that's really fun to me, because the point of the book is not to say I know all this stuff. It's to encourage, and it's to hopefully encourage thoughts and encourage people to action. So little stories like that are awesome. And I know I get Bill's newsletter now, so it's really fun. He's writing stories, and I think he's doing a good job. So the other thing was actually pretty soon after we published the book. My little nephew, he plays football, and he's 10, and he was wanting to play quarterback, and he actually we got to go to his game. He got the chance to play, and so he gets in, and the first play of the game, literally throws like a perfect pass to the 50-yard line. Kid reaches out to grab it, and he just drops the ball. So his first play goes from possible touchdown to failure, if you will. So then he winds up going 4 and out, or he 3 other plays and doesn't get anything. So it's 4 and out, and he stays in the game. He plays. He winds up throwing 2 or 3 touchdown passes, has a couple interceptions. But anyway, after the game, his dad came up to me and he said, "Nolan, why don't you tell Justin and Kendra what you told me before the game?" And he looked up at us and he said, "You know what? I was really scared to go in the game." But then I remembered your book and how it was okay to fail. So I went for it.
Yeah.
And those little stories, to me, that's the fun part of writing the book. That's the fun part of having conversations, is, again, not to like boast and say I did this or I know all this. Is to say, you know what, I'm glad I helped you maybe get over that hurdle. And I'm glad I encouraged you to action, because in reality, I can say all I want, but until someone takes their own action, nothing's going to happen. So little things like that have been really cool.
Yeah. I love it. What I love about what you're talking about is, whether it's your book or whatever anybody needs, but in this case, your book, it activates somebody to have that 0.001% extra courage they need to do what they need to do.
Exactly.
And so it all starts, because the commitment sometimes is there, but sometimes we all need that word, that book, that article, that podcast to just give us the courage to evolve ourselves. So then we walk out like your nephew with more capabilities, and then all of a sudden confidence is grown, all from a book that's gave somebody courage. So I love it. I think it's great.
And I tell people a lot too, because people ask, like, well, there's already a book on this out there, there's a book here. But I always kind of come back and say, you know what, people connect through stories, and there are people that I can connect with that you can never connect with, and there are people that you connect with that I'll never connect with. So I think the lesson is just write your story. There will be people that connect with it, and only you can encourage. So if people are thinking about writing a book or putting something out there, I guarantee you there's someone out there that can be encouraged by your story.
Yeah. Well, and also, even if you had a class of 10 people, 1,000 people, or 1 million people, and you gave everybody the same exact topic, it's going to be, every story will be different, and everybody's story resonates with everybody else's. I love everything that you're talking about. All right, quick speed round. You ready, Justin?
Ready.
All right. A book that's had the biggest impact on you.
Darren Hardy's The Compound Effect.
It's one of my favorite books. It's
one
of
my favorite impact. Books. Yeah, I love it.
I was in commercial real estate, and this woman came in for an interview, and she was reading that book. And it was like, oh my God, it was like, I think it was like almost 10, 12 plus years ago. And I was running this office, and I needed a theme for my next year. And she told me about that book, and I read it, and I carried it through for an entire year. It still is one of my all-time favorite books.
I love it. It made such an impact. It was one of the first books that I read. I read it before Rich Dad Poor Dad, but then it allowed me to really look at learning and look at little actions, and just, it might look bleak in the short run, but in the long run, it's going to compound. I still use it to this day. Yeah,
I do too. And I think where it, I think, applies even more today than in a market that is so active, as we're in this kind of adjusting market right now, as we're recording this live on November 10th, 2022, is, you can't just look at one element of your business today, like your pipeline or this, because it may not be growing, but if you're doing everything you need to do every single day and doing all the right things, all those little things are building and compounding and will grow your business. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I love that book. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
It's got to be from my dad. My dad told me early on, it's not like we were ultra wealthy growing up, but my dad did well with money, and something he instilled in me from the time I could ever remember handling money. He just ingrained in me, money is a tool. He goes, you can use money as a tool for evil or a tool for good. And that's all it is a tool. And that's always stuck with me. And I think it's allowed me to not get fixated or be just fascinated with the love of money or chasing money.
Yeah.
I just know it's a tool, and it's a tool we can use, hopefully in a positive way.
Yeah, I love that. It kind of takes the emotion out of it, takes the fear of money that I think sometimes people have.
Yeah.
And if it's just a tool, then it's okay to be a conscious capitalist and, be in alignment and make as much money as you want if it's just a tool. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, yep. I love that. I always look at money as, and this was an evolving process for me because I didn't always look at it like this, but as I kind of look at money, I always look and say, okay, I want to make as much money as I possibly can, because the more money I make, the more people I can help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it kind of bleeds into my community philanthropic goals as well.
Yeah,
so
I love that.
Yeah. Finish the sentence. One thing everybody can do to learn a lesson from a failure is?
That's a good one. I would say ask a question.
Yeah.
Either ask yourself a question or ask someone that was in the failure with you a question, and that question can lead to more questions. So that would be my first initial reaction, is ask a question. What went wrong? What did I do right? And go from there.
I love it. Tell everybody where they can connect with you, your ideal clients, and where they can buy your book.
Yeah, you can go to www.professional-failure.com. All the links are there to social media. And then you can also email me. I'll do this too, if you're okay with this. If anyone emails me, it's justin@professional-failure.com. Just email me and ask for my book, and I'll send you a free copy of the PDF.
I love it.
Professional Failure.
Love it. Justin, I appreciate you having me on your show a couple of weeks ago. I appreciate you being on my show. Think community, I'm a business coach. I work with successful people who are stuck, and I get them unstuck. This podcast is a vehicle for me to bring on guests to help you also get unstuck in your business, and many of it spills over into life. There's a lot of things that Justin shared today. I'm going to extract one thing, which is share your story, because it will have an impact on somebody else. And sometimes you really only need to impact 1 or 2 or 3 people a year to grow your business. It's not like you got to go viral. Justin and I were talking, you don't necessarily make money on a book sale, but you make money on having a book for many, many other reasons. So share your story. Somebody out there needs to hear it to help them grow. Justin, tell everybody again where they can connect with you.
Yeah. You can go to www.professional-failure.com. All my links are there to the book, the social media, and just want to say, Jon, thanks for all you do too. Definitely going to be referring people to you as they come along. So
thanks, man.
Appreciate everything you do and all the wisdom you share.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, Justin. Think community, buy Justin's book. It's great. I think you'll really, really enjoy it. And you can always connect with me at jondwoskin.com. Thanks, everybody. Justin, thanks, man. This was great.
Thanks, Jon.